Commander Jalax of the Vryn Empire stood before the holographic display, his three eyes narrowing in disbelief. The reports streaming in from the outer rim made no sense. An entire battle fleet, 200 ships strong, had been reduced to scattered debris in less than 4 standard hours. The attackers? A single human vessel? This cannot be accurate, Jalax hissed, his translator converting the clicks and whistles into Galactic standard. Run the diagnostics again. His subordinate, a younger Vryn named Kelthus, manipulated the console with trembling appendages. Commander, I have verified the data 17 times. The human ship designated Terran Fury engaged our fleet at coordinate 793. They employed tactics we have never encountered. Jalax had heard whispers about humanity. Everyone in the Galactic Council had. They came from a planet called Earth, a nightmare world of extreme gravity, violent weather, and predators at every level of the food chain. Most species discovered space travel after evolving on peaceful worlds with minimal threats. Humans were different. They came from what the galaxy had begun calling a Deathworld. The hologram replayed the battle. Jalax watched as the Terran Fury, a vessel no larger than a standard cruiser, approached the Vryn fleet. Standard protocol dictated a defensive formation, which the Vryn had executed perfectly. Ships spread out, point defense systems activated, shield matrices linked for maximum protection. Then the humans did something inexplicable. The Terran Fury accelerated directly toward the fleet's center, at speeds that should have torn the ship apart. Most species build vessels to keep their crews comfortable, limiting acceleration to prevent injury. Humans apparently did not share this concern. Pause there, Jalax commanded. The image froze as the human ship reached the fleet's perimeter. What is that emerging from their hull? Kelthus enhanced the image. Dozens of small objects were ejecting from the Terran Fury, spreading out in a calculated pattern. Initial scans suggested they were escape pods. We assumed the ship was damaged and the crew was abandoning vessel. They were not escape pods, Jalax said quietly, understanding beginning to dawn. No, Commander. They were bombs. Crude nuclear fusion devices wrapped in reflective shielding to avoid our sensors. But here is what makes no tactical sense. The yield of each device was relatively small. Individually, they could barely damage a single ship. Jalax watched as the human ship suddenly decelerated, a maneuver that should have killed everyone aboard through sheer force. The scattered bombs detonated simultaneously, not near any Vryn vessels, but in precise positions throughout the formation. The explosions created electromagnetic pulses that disrupted shield harmonics across the entire fleet. For exactly 3 seconds, 200 Vryn warships were vulnerable. 3 seconds was all the humans needed. The Terran Fury's weapon systems, which had appeared dormant, came alive. Kinetic accelerators fired solid projectiles at a significant fraction of light speed. These were not sophisticated energy weapons like those used by civilized species. They were chunks of metal moving impossibly fast. The projectiles punched through hull after hull. Ships that had stood firm against plasma cannons and particle beams for centuries crumpled like paper. The Vryn fleet tried to re-establish formation, but the humans were already moving again, weaving through the debris field they had created, firing continuously. They used our own defensive positions against us, Kelthus observed. By clustering for shield linking, we made ourselves a concentrated target. Jalax said nothing. He was watching something else now. The human ship was damaged, venting atmosphere from multiple hull breaches. Any sane species would retreat. The Terran Fury charged deeper into the fleet. Our battle analysis suggests they were using something called acceptable losses, Kelthus continued, pulling up more data. Human military doctrine apparently considers crew casualties acceptable if the strategic objective is achieved. Their ships carry medical facilities we consider barbaric, designed to keep warriors fighting even with catastrophic injuries. The battle recording showed Vryn ships attempting to focus fire on the human vessel, but it moved in patterns that defied their targeting computers. Rather than the smooth, efficient curves that flight computers calculated, the Terran Fury jerked and spun randomly, making prediction impossible. Later analysis would reveal that humans were piloting manually, using instincts honed by living on a world where hesitation meant death. When the Terran Fury finally withdrew, it left behind 173 destroyed or disabled Vryn warships. The human vessel itself was barely functional, held together by emergency force fields and determination. Yet it had won. We need to inform the Council, Jalax said finally. Humanity is not like the other species. They do not think like us. They do not fight like us. Keltis brought up additional reports. Commander, this was not an isolated incident. Human forces have engaged the Carthan Collective, the Solmari Union, and the Yentris Swarm. Each time they employed tactics that violated accepted rules of warfare, such as, against the Carthan, they pretended to surrender, then detonated their own ship when the Carthan boarded it. Against the Solmari, they broadcast false fleet positions and lured their armada into a star's corona. Against the Yentris, they released a biological agent that specifically targeted the Yentris queens. The entire conflict ended in 48 hours. Jalax felt a cold dread settling over him. The Galactic Council had rules for warfare developed over millions of years. These rules ensured conflicts remained limited, that civilian casualties were minimized, that ancient species could continue their existence without extinction-level threats. Humans had no concept of these rules. Or more terrifyingly, they understood the rules perfectly and chose to ignore them. There is more, Commander, Keltis said hesitantly. Intelligence reports suggest that humanity has not yet deployed their full military capabilities. The Terran Fury is classified as a light cruiser in their fleet designation. It is considered outdated by their standards. What do their modern vessels look like? We do not know. No one has seen them and survived to report. Jalax stared at the frozen hologram, at the battered human ship that had destroyed a fleet. Humanity had joined the Galactic Council only 3 standard years ago. In that time, they had established trade relations, shared cultural exchanges, and seemed to integrate peacefully into galactic society. Then border disputes began. Minor conflicts erupted. The Council species, accustomed to limited warfare, expected humans to follow established conventions. They were catastrophically wrong. Send a priority message to the Council chambers on Vorinth Prime, Jalax ordered. Humanity must be controlled or we are all in danger. Keltis hesitated. Commander, what if they cannot be controlled? Jalax did not answer. He was remembering a human phrase he had heard during diplomatic meetings, one that seemed charming at the time. Humans often said they came in peace. The full saying he had learned was longer. We come in peace. We have no hostile intentions. But if you threaten us, we will demonstrate why nothing on our planet could kill us permanently. Now, watching the ruins of his fleet spin silently in space, Jalax understood what humanity truly was. They were not conquerors or warriors by choice. They were survivors from a world that had tried to kill them for millions of years and failed. Every human carried that legacy in their genetic code, in their thinking, in their reflexes. The galaxy had never encountered anything like them. And now, the galaxy would have to decide whether to accept humanity's presence or try to eliminate them. Jalax suspected the latter option would prove fatal for everyone except the humans. The Galactic Council chamber on Vorinth Prime had stood for 12,000 years, a massive crystalline structure that housed representatives from 473 species. Today, the chamber buzzed with anxious energy as delegates discussed the growing human problem. Ambassador Thress of the Cortani Federation addressed the assembly, her voice carrying through translation devices. The humans have violated every principle of civilized warfare. They target supply lines, engage in deception, and refuse to honor surrender protocols. This cannot continue. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. High Chancellor Vorn, an ancient being whose species had helped found the Council, raised a crystalline appendage for silence. We have received reports from 17 sectors. Human tactics are indeed concerning. However, we must remember that they are a young species. Perhaps education rather than confrontation is appropriate. A delegate from the Xanther Collective, a species known for their military prowess, stood abruptly. Education? They destroyed a Vryn battle fleet with a single ship. They defeated the Carthan using suicide tactics. These are not misunderstandings. These are deliberate acts of barbarism. From the human delegation area, Ambassador Sarah Chen rose smoothly. She was small by galactic standards, barely reaching the thorax of most species. Yet her presence commanded attention. Human diplomats had that effect. They possessed an intensity that made others uncomfortable. Honorable delegates, Chen began, her voice calm but carrying an edge that made several species instinctively move back. I understand your concerns. However, I must point out that in every incident cited, humanity was responding to aggression initiated by Council species. Responding? Thress's translator conveyed indignation. You annihilated entire fleets. Yes, Chen agreed simply. You attacked us. We defended ourselves. The scale of our response was proportional to the threat we faced. Vorn intervened before the argument could escalate. Ambassador Chen, perhaps you could explain human military doctrine to the Council. Many species here do not understand your tactical approaches. Chen nodded, activating a holographic display. An image of Earth appeared, rotating slowly. Most delegates had never seen a death world so clearly. The planet looked beautiful from space, blue and green, deceptively peaceful. This is our home, Chen said. Gravity is 3 times what most of you consider comfortable. Weather systems can generate winds exceeding 300 kilometers per hour. Volcanic activity, earthquakes, and tsunamis occur regularly. And then there is the biology. The display changed, showing various Earth predators. A great white shark breaching the water, jaws wide. A saltwater crocodile dragging prey underwater. A grizzly bear standing 3 meters tall. A Komodo dragon, its saliva containing 50 different toxic bacteria. Even the plants could kill, from poisonous berries to trees with toxic sap. For millions of years, humanity evolved on a planet that actively tried to kill us. Chen continued. We did not develop technology in peace. We developed it while fighting for survival against creatures stronger, faster, and more numerous than us. Our military tactics reflect this history. She changed the display to show human warfare through history. Ancient battles with spears and shields. Medieval sieges. World wars with trenches and tanks. Modern conflicts with drones and precision strikes. The progression showed a species that had been fighting since it learned to walk upright. When you attack a human position, you are not attacking a species that developed warfare as an intellectual exercise, Chen explained. You are attacking a species that has been at war with its own planet for its entire existence. We do not fight by your rules because on Earth there were no rules. There was only survival. A delegate from the peaceful Yentris swarm spoke, her voice trembling slightly. But the biological weapon you used against my people. You targeted our queens specifically. That is genocide under council law. Chen turned to face the Yentris directly. Your swarm attacked a human colony. You killed 17,000 civilians, including children. You did this because you wanted the mineral-rich asteroids in that system. When we developed a targeted pathogen that would incapacitate your queens without killing them, thus ending the war immediately, we chose the option that saved lives on both sides. Your swarm would have continued attacking until we were extinct or you were. We chose a third option, but it was dishonorable, the Yentris protested. Honor, Chen said softly, is a luxury afforded to species who have never truly faced extinction. Humanity learned long ago that honor does not matter if you are dead. Results matter. Survival matters. Everything else is decoration. The chamber erupted in arguments. Some delegates demanded humanity be censured, possibly expelled from the council. Others, primarily species who had experienced human defensive capabilities firsthand, remained silent. They had learned what happened to those who threatened humanity. High Chancellor Vorn called for order again. When the chamber quieted, he addressed Chen directly. Ambassador, the Council cannot accept a member species that refuses to follow established rules of warfare. These rules exist for good reason. They prevent total war. They preserve civilizations. Without them, conflicts spiral into mutual destruction. Chen met his gaze steadily. Chancellor, with respect, your rules exist because Council species never face true existential threats during their development. You created rules that make warfare civilized because you could afford to be civilized. Humanity cannot afford that luxury. When someone attacks us, we respond with overwhelming force because anything less means our destruction. That is the thinking of a primitive species, Thress interjected. Perhaps, Chen acknowledged. But it is also the thinking of a species that survived when everything in the universe tried to kill it. The dinosaurs did not survive Earth. 99% of all species that evolved on our planet went extinct. Humanity endured. We endured ice ages, plagues, predators, and each other. We endured because we learned one fundamental lesson that apparently the galaxy forgot. What lesson? Vorn asked. Peace, Chen said quietly, is not the natural state of the universe. Peace is something you build through strength. You maintain peace by ensuring that attacking you is too costly to consider. The Council species have enjoyed millions of years of relative peace because you all agreed to fight politely, but that peace is fragile. It exists only because no one has truly tested it. She gestured to the holographic display, which now showed human colony worlds, mining operations, and trading stations scattered across dozens of systems. Humanity has integrated into galactic society. We have contributed technology, art, culture, and resources. We want peace, but we will not accept peace at any price. If you threaten us, we will fight. If you fight us, we will win. If you force us to escalate, you will regret it. A delegate from the distant Kolrathi Empire, a species that had remained neutral in all conflicts, finally spoke. Ambassador Chen, you speak of strength and survival. But what happens when humanity becomes the threat? What happens when your Deathworld tactics are used not in defense but in conquest? Chen was quiet for a moment. When she spoke again, her voice carried a weight that silenced the entire chamber. That is a fair question. I will answer it honestly. Humanity has been the threat before. In our own history, we conquered each other. We committed atrocities. We built weapons capable of destroying our entire planet. We nearly did destroy ourselves multiple times. The delegates shifted uncomfortably. This admission was unusual in galactic diplomacy. But we learned, Chen continued, we learned that strength without wisdom leads to extinction. We learned that winning means nothing if you destroy yourself in the process. When we finally unified and reached the stars, we did so with the understanding that we carried both the capacity for great violence and the responsibility to control it. She looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of countless species. You ask what happens if humanity becomes the threat? The answer is simple. If we ever use our capabilities for conquest rather than defense, then you should all unite against us. Because a humanity that forgets the lessons of its own history would be too dangerous to exist. The honesty was startling. Council species typically spoke in diplomatic platitudes. Chen's blunt acknowledgement of human danger actually made several delegates relax slightly. A species aware of its own capacity for destruction was less likely to use it carelessly. High Chancellor Vorn considered her words carefully. Ambassador Chen, the Council must deliberate on humanity's status. However, I will personally advocate for continued membership with conditions. Humanity must agree to submit all military actions to Council review and limit offensive capabilities. Chen shook her head. We cannot accept those conditions, Chancellor. We will not surrender our ability to defend ourselves to a committee that does not understand the threats we face. However, we will agree to transparency protocols and joint military exercises to demonstrate our tactics. Before Vorn could respond, alarms suddenly blared throughout the chamber. Emergency systems activated as a massive holographic display materialized above the assembly floor. It showed a sector of space on the galactic rim, an area previously considered stable. Commander Jalax's image appeared, his three eyes wide with terror. The war room beneath the council chambers had never seen such activity. Representatives from every major military power in the galaxy crowded around holographic displays showing the invasion in real time. The enemy, designated as the Devourers for their systematic consumption of all resources on targeted worlds, pushed deeper into council space with each passing hour. General Carthex of the Xanthir Collective, considered the finest military mind in the galaxy, pointed to the tactical display with one of his forearms. Their strategy is brutally efficient. They strike at resource-rich worlds, harvest everything, then move to the next target. Our defensive fleets cannot match their speed or firepower. High Chancellor Vorn studied the display with growing despair. How many ships do they have? Estimates suggest over 10,000 capital ships with support craft numbering in the hundreds of thousands, Carthex replied. They coordinate perfectly, never waste movement, and their weapons technology exceeds ours by at least 2 generations. Ambassador Chen stood slightly apart from the main group, watching the invasion data stream across her personal tablet. Captain Marcus Rivera, commander of the human military contingent, stood beside her. He was tall even by human standards, with gray at his temples and scars on his hands that spoke of direct combat experience. Captain, Chen said quietly. Assessment? Rivera studied the tactical situation for several seconds before responding. They fight like a machine. Perfect coordination, optimal efficiency, 0 wasted resources. It's actually beautiful in a terrifying way. Can we beat them? Rivera smiled, but there was no humor in it. Ma'am, they fight like a machine. That's their weakness. Machines are predictable. Machines follow logic. Humans? He gestured vaguely. We're the crazy apes who survived a planet that tried to kill us for 4 million years. Logic is optional. Chen turned to address the war room. General Carthax, may I offer a human perspective on this situation? Carthax hesitated, clearly reluctant, but Vorn nodded permission. Chen approached the holographic display, Captain Rivera following. You are fighting them the same way you fight each other, Chen observed. Defensive formations, shield matrices, coordinated fleet movements. All logical, all efficient, all exactly what they expect. What would you suggest? Carthax asked, his tone suggesting he expected nothing useful. Rivera tapped the display, highlighting 3 separate Devourer fleet concentrations. They move in pattern. Watch. See how they approach each target system? Always the same formation, always the same interval between ships, always the same attack sequence. They have optimized warfare to maximum efficiency, and that is precisely how warfare should be conducted, Carthax insisted. Against another logical opponent, yes, Chen agreed, but humans learned long ago that when you cannot match an enemy's strength, you change the rules of engagement. She manipulated the display, showing a human colony world in the Devourer's projected path. New Terra, population 8 million, recently established and lightly defended. This world will be attacked within 72 hours. Let us defend it human way. The room erupted in protests. The Yentris delegate, still bitter about the targeted pathogen, spoke loudest. You want us to trust human tactics after you have violated every principle of civilized warfare? No, Chen said bluntly. I want you to survive. Trust is optional. High Chancellor Vorn raised an appendage for silence. Ambassador Chen, explain your proposal fully. Chen nodded to Rivera, who brought up tactical schematics. The Devourers expect resistance at the planet. They will arrive with overwhelming force, destroy the defensive fleet, and harvest the world. Standard procedure for them. Instead, we evacuate the civilian population quietly over the next 48 hours. Make it look like normal traffic. When they arrive, they find something unexpected. The display changed to show New Terra, but now the planet was surrounded by a shell of small objects orbiting in seemingly random patterns. These are automated defense platforms, not the sophisticated AI-controlled systems you typically use. These are simple, stupid, and cheap to manufacture. Each one carries a single nuclear device and basic targeting software. Carthax scoffed. Nuclear weapons are obsolete. Modern shielding negates their effectiveness completely. Against sophisticated military shields, yes, Rivera agreed. But here is what we do. The Devourers arrive expecting a fight. They find an empty world with some primitive defenses. They will scan the planet, determine it is not worth the resources to fully engage, and move their main fleet past while leaving a smaller harvesting force. That is when we activate the real defense, Chen continued. Hidden on the planet's surface in the ocean trenches and underground bunkers, we have larger devices. Not nuclear, not conventional. We call them crustal disruption weapons. They trigger tectonic activity. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. You would destroy the planet? Vorn asked quietly. The planet is already lost, Chen pointed out. The Devourers will strip it bare anyway. But if we trigger a planetary event while their harvesting fleet is in low orbit, we eliminate a significant portion of their forces. The main fleet, seeing their support craft destroyed, will have to divert resources to investigate. That breaks their pattern. It is monstrous, Thress whispered. It is practical, Chen countered. One planet already doomed to destroy a fleet that would otherwise conquer a dozen worlds. The mathematics are clear. Rivera brought up another display. But that is just the opening move. While they investigate New Terra, we hit them here, here, and here. He indicated 3 of their supply line nodes. The Devourers are efficient, which means they do not waste resources on excessive supply stockpiles. They depend on constant resupply from conquered worlds. We interdict those supply lines. Our forces cannot reach those positions without being detected, Carthax objected. Your forces cannot, Rivera agreed. Human ships can. We have vessels designed for stealth insertion. Not cloaking devices, nothing sophisticated. Just ships built from materials that absorb sensor scans, painted with compounds that scatter electromagnetic radiation, and flown by pilots trained to use orbital mechanics and debris fields for cover. He zoomed in on one supply node. We insert special forces teams, small units of soldiers equipped for independent operation. They sabotage the supply infrastructure, not by direct assault but by introducing contaminants into the resource processing systems. The Devourers harvest resources, then discover those resources are unusable. Efficiency drops. Their perfect machine starts developing glitches. Chen took over the explanation. Simultaneously, we begin information warfare. The Devourers coordinate their fleet through some form of communication network. We flood that network with false data, not sophisticated hacking. Nothing they will immediately detect, just tiny inconsistencies. Navigation data that is off by 0.01%. Targeting solutions that are correct 99% of the time. Resource reports that are accurate except for small errors. The errors will compound. Vorn realized, his ancient mind understanding the elegance of the strategy. Small mistakes become larger ones. Their coordination degrades. Exactly, Chen confirmed. Meanwhile, we engage in what humans call guerrilla warfare. We do not meet their fleets in direct battle. We hit their scouts, their surveyors, their forward elements, always with overwhelming local superiority. Then we disappear before reinforcements arrive. We make them paranoid, make them waste resources checking every asteroid, every debris field, every shadow. Carthex was studying the proposals with grudging respect. You would turn their own efficiency against them, make them doubt their perfect system. We learn this fighting each other, Rivera said. On Earth, smaller nations often defeated larger ones by refusing to fight the way the larger force expected. Vietnam, Afghanistan, countless examples of weaker forces bleeding stronger ones through unconventional tactics. But this risks the entire strategy being discovered. A Solmari admiral objected. If they realize what we are doing, they will adapt. They will adapt eventually, Chen agreed. But adaptation takes time, requires communication, demands central coordination. Every adaptation they make, we force them to waste resources. And while they adapt, we escalate. She brought up the final phase of the plan. Once we have disrupted their operations, caused casualties and made them uncertain, we offer negotiation. Not surrender negotiation. We open a dialogue. They have not responded to any communication attempts, Vorn noted. They have not responded to Council communication attempts, Chen corrected. The Council has been offering surrender or asking for mercy. Humans will communicate differently. We will offer them a choice. They can leave Council space and find resources elsewhere, or we can continue bleeding them until the cost of conquest exceeds the value of what they gain. Rivera added, and if they refuse, if they insist on total war, then we implement human total war doctrine. We stop playing defense. We track them back to wherever they came from, and we bring the fight to their territory. We make them understand that attacking humanity and our allies means their own homes are at risk. The war room was silent as the assembled delegates processed the strategy. It violated every principle of civilized warfare they knew. The evacuation of New Terra proceeded exactly as planned. Civilian transports departed at regular intervals disguised as routine trade convoys. The Devourers' scout ships observed but did not interfere. Why waste resources on fleeing prey when the planet itself would be harvested soon enough? Lieutenant Sarah Okonkwo stood in the command bunker 3 kilometers beneath New Terra's surface, watching the countdown timer tick toward 0. Around her, 50 human soldiers prepared for the most critical 48 hours of their lives. Some checked weapons. Others reviewed technical manuals for equipment they would need to operate. A few simply sat quietly, making peace with the strong possibility they would not survive this mission. All civilians are clear. Captain Rivera's voice came through the secure channel. You are authorized to proceed with Phase 1 when the Devourers arrive. Understood, sir, Okonkwo replied. She was young for such responsibility, only 28 standard years, but she had grown up on a frontier colony that had fought off pirates, hostile wildlife, and equipment failures. She understood survival. The soldier next to her, Corporal James Martinez, was doing something that would have baffled most galactic species. He was humming while assembling a rifle. You know the weird thing, Lieutenant? He said conversationally. 2 months ago, we were the bad guys. The scary humans with their violent tactics. Now we are the galaxy's best hope. Funny how perspective changes when something worse shows up, Okonkwo agreed. The bunker shook slightly as Devourer ships entered orbit. The enemy fleet was massive, nearly 1,000 ships, more than the initial projections had suggested. They began orbital bombardment protocols, standard procedure for eliminating surface defenses before harvesting operations began. Explosions rippled across New Terra's surface. Cities humans had built over 20 years, agricultural zones that fed millions, research stations pushing the boundaries of science, all destroyed in minutes. The automated defense platforms tried to fight back, firing their primitive weapons with determination if not effectiveness. The Devourers eliminated them systematically. They are taking the bait, Okonkwo reported. Fleet is maintaining high orbit while attack craft descend. On the tactical display, she watched the Devourer strategy unfold exactly as Rivera had predicted. The massive capital ships remained in safe positions while smaller harvesting vessels descended to begin resource extraction. Efficient, logical, predictable. Phase 2. In 5 minutes, Okonkwo announced. Her team moved to their positions, each soldier manning a control station for the crustal disruption devices hidden throughout the planet's tectonic plates. The Devourer's harvesting ships touched down across 3 continents, massive machines beginning to drill, excavate, and process everything they encountered. Metals, minerals, even the soil itself was consumed and converted into raw materials for their fleet. 3 minutes. Okonkwo watched the display showing harvesting ship positions. They were clustering in resource-rich areas just as human projections had suggested. Maximum efficiency, maximum vulnerability. 2 minutes. She thought about the people she had helped evacuate. Families, children, elderly civilians who had built lives on this world. Their homes were gone now, destroyed. But they were alive, heading to safety on Council worlds. That had to be enough. 1 minute, Martinez finished his humming and looked at Okonkwo. Lieutenant, if this works, we are heroes. If it fails, we murdered a planet for nothing. That is a hell of a responsibility. Welcome to human military service, Okonkwo said with a tight smile. We have been making impossible choices since we figured out how to throw rocks at each other. 10 seconds. The countdown reached 0. Okonkwo activated the sequence. Deep beneath the planet's surface, in carefully calculated positions along fault lines and tectonic boundaries, the crustal disruption devices triggered simultaneously. They were not conventional explosives. They used a technology humans had developed specifically for mining operations on unstable worlds. Devices that could trigger controlled tectonic releases, except there was nothing controlled about this. New Terra's surface buckled and heaved. Earthquake waves propagated across entire continents. Volcanoes that had been dormant for millennia exploded back to life. The planet, stable for millions of years, suddenly became as violent as Earth itself during its most catastrophic geological events. The Devourer's harvesting ships, designed for efficiency not resilience, were caught in the upheaval. Some were swallowed by sudden chasms. Others were buried under volcanic ash and debris. A few managed to launch only to be struck by debris thrown into low orbit by massive explosions. In high orbit, the Devourer command ships detected the disaster. Their response was immediate and exactly what human strategists had anticipated. Rather than writing off the harvesting fleet and continuing their invasion, they diverted resources to investigate. Was this a natural phenomenon? A weapon, a trap? The perfect machine needed to understand what had disrupted its efficiency. While the Devourer fleet hesitated over New Terra, analyzing the unexpected disaster, human strike teams executed their missions across 36 locations simultaneously. Commander Alexei Volkov led one such team toward a Devourer supply depot on an asteroid in the Kepler 442 system. His team consisted of 12 soldiers, specialists in zero-gravity combat and demolition. They approached in a ship barely large enough to hold them, its hull covered in materials that made it nearly invisible to sensors. Contact in 30 seconds, Volkov whispered, though in the vacuum of space, silence was guaranteed regardless. His team checked their equipment one final time. No powered armor, no energy shields, nothing that would generate detectable signatures. Just pressure suits, chemical propulsion packs, and weapons that would have seemed primitive to any Council species. They drifted toward the asteroid, using microburst thrusters to adjust trajectory. The Devourer facility loomed ahead, a massive structure built directly into the asteroid's surface. Harvesting ships came and went in steady streams, collecting processed resources. Volkov's team landed on the asteroid's dark side, magnetic boots engaging with the metallic surface. They moved slowly, staying in shadows, using the facility's own sensor blind spots for cover. This was another human specialty. Most species relied on technology to hide them. Humans had learned stealth from hunting animals that could smell fear and hear heartbeats. Entry point located, reported Sergeant Park, their infiltration specialist. She had found an access port used by automated maintenance drones. too small for most species to consider a security risk. Humans, smaller and more flexible than many galactic species, fit perfectly. The team entered the facility one by one, finding themselves in a vast chamber filled with resource processing equipment. Automated systems sorted, refined, and packaged materials for transport to Devourer ships. Everything operated with mechanical precision. "Plant the packages," Volkov ordered. His team dispersed, each soldier carrying containers of what appeared to be refined metals, materials that would blend perfectly with the legitimate cargo. Except these materials had been treated with compounds that would contaminate anything they contacted. The contamination was subtle. Resources processed alongside the human packages would not be immediately unusable. Instead, they would degrade slowly. Alloys would develop microfractures. Electronics would suffer increased failure rates. Nothing catastrophic, just a slow degradation of reliability. "Packages placed," Park reported. "They should enter the supply chain within 6 hours." Volkov checked his chronometer. "Extraction in 5 minutes. Everyone to the exit point." The team retraced their path, moving with the same careful precision. Behind them, the Devourer facility continued its operations, unaware that poison had been introduced to its perfect system. Across the galaxy, similar operations proceeded. Human teams sabotaged supply lines, planted false sensor readings, and disrupted communication relays. Each action was small, barely noticeable individually, but collectively, they created friction in the Devourer machine. Meanwhile, in space near the Solmari border, Commander Chen Mei piloted her stealth fighter through a debris field left by a recent Devourer attack. She was hunting scouts, the small ships the Devourers sent ahead of their main fleet to survey potential targets. Her ship's sensors detected one such scout analyzing a nearby asteroid. Chen Mei approached slowly, using the debris for cover. The scout's sensors were sophisticated, capable of detecting most vessels at considerable range. But Chen Mei's ship was painted with compounds developed from Earth's stealth aircraft, materials designed to scatter sensor beams rather than reflect them. She drifted within weapons range, her targeting computer acquiring the scout. But she did not fire immediately. Instead, she waited until a second scout appeared on her sensors, investigating a different section of the debris field. 2 targets, she muttered to herself. Acceptable odds. Chen Mei launched 2 missiles simultaneously, simple chemical rockets carrying conventional explosive warheads. No sophisticated guidance systems, no energy signatures to detect, just momentum and timing. The missiles struck both scouts within seconds of each other, destroying them completely. Before Devourer reinforcements could arrive, Chen Mei was already accelerating away, her ship's minimal signature making tracking nearly impossible. The defense of Vorinth Prime required every warship the Council could muster. Over 2,000 vessels from dozens of species gathered in the system's outer regions, forming a defensive perimeter around the ancient world where galactic civilization had been governed for 12 millennia. It was the largest military force ever assembled under Council authority. It would not be enough. Not fighting conventionally, Captain Marcus. Rivera stood on the bridge of the human dreadnought Indomitable, coordinating the defense alongside General Carthax and representatives from every major military power. The tactical display showed their forces arranged in traditional defensive formations, shield matrices overlapping, point defense grids synchronized. "This is wrong," Rivera said abruptly. Carthax turned 3 of his eyes toward the human officer. "Explain." "We are giving them what they expect," Rivera gestured to the display. "A static defense around a fixed target. They will calculate optimal attack vectors, concentrate forces, and break through. We cannot win by fighting their way." "What alternative do you propose?" a Vryn admiral demanded. "The Devourers will arrive in 12 hours. We cannot evacuate an entire planetary population in that time." Rivera manipulated the display, showing a different configuration. "We do not try to stop them from reaching Vorinth. We let them through." The war room erupted in protests. High Chancellor Vorn, who had remained on his homeworld despite pleas to evacuate, spoke through the communication system. "Captain Rivera, you suggest abandoning my world to the enemy?" "No, Chancellor. I suggest using your world as bait." Rivera expanded the tactical projection. "The Devourers are logical. They see our fleet defending Vorinth, so they know this is a high-value target. They will commit their entire force to breaking our defense. But what if our defense is not where they expect it? He highlighted several positions behind Vorinth, using the planet's gravity well and orbital mechanics. We position the bulk of our fleet here, hidden by the planet itself and using sensor shadows created by Vorinth's industrial satellites. We leave only enough ships in visible defensive positions to appear credible. When the Devourers commit to their attack, they will have their backs to our real force. Ambassador Chen, listening from Earth where she coordinated diplomatic efforts, spoke through the communication link. A trap. You want to ambush 5,000 Devourer ships. Not ambush exactly, Rivera corrected. Ambush implies hiding our presence. They will detect our concealed fleet eventually, but detection takes time. Analysis takes time. Repositioning takes time. We do not need them to be blind. We just need them to be slow. A Solmari commander studied the proposal with growing understanding. You want to create decision paralysis. They will detect our hidden fleet and must choose between continuing their attack on the visible defenders or turning to face the new threat. Either choice requires time to coordinate across 5,000 ships. And while they coordinate, Rivera continued, we hit them from both sides. The visible defenders become the hammer. The hidden fleet becomes the anvil. We crush them between. Carthex examined the strategy from every angle. This requires precise timing. If the Devourers detect our hidden fleet too early, they will adapt. If they detect it too late, they will have already destroyed our visible defenders. Yes, Rivera agreed, which is why we need to control when they detect us. We need to feed them information at exactly the right moments to manipulate their decision-making process. He brought up additional tactical details. We have been planting false sensor readings and contaminated data in their systems for weeks. They know their information is compromised, but not how severely. So when they arrive at Vorinth and scan for threats, they will question what they detect. Is our hidden fleet real or another false reading? Do they have time to verify before committing to attack? Psychological warfare, Vorn said quietly. You are trying to make them doubt themselves. Every species doubts under pressure, Chen interjected. The Devourers have operated with certainty because they always had superior force and perfect information. We have taken away their information advantage. Now we take away their force advantage by making them divide their attention. A Yentris military coordinator raised concerns. But what of the civilian population on Vorinth? If the Devourers break through our visible defense, millions will die before we can close the trap. Rivera's expression became grim. Some will die. War has casualties, but if we fight a conventional defensive battle, all will die and we will lose our fleet besides. This gives us the best chance of saving the most lives. The cold mathematics of his statement silenced protests. This was the human way of warfare. Accept some casualties to prevent total loss. It was brutal, practical, and effective. High Chancellor Vorn made the decision. Implement Captain Rivera's plan, but I will remain on Vorinth. If my people face danger, their leader faces it with them. Respectfully, Chancellor, that is foolish, Rivera said bluntly. Your death serves no strategic purpose. Perhaps not, Vorn agreed. But it serves a symbolic one. You humans understand symbols. Your military history is filled with leaders who fought alongside their soldiers. I will do no less. Rivera said nothing for a moment, then nodded with respect. Understood, sir. We will do everything possible to ensure you see the victory. The fleet began repositioning according to the new strategy. Human stealth ships, now operating openly as scouts and coordinators, helped guide Council vessels into their concealed positions. The visible defense force, composed of older ships and vessels damaged in previous engagements, took positions in traditional defensive formations. To enemy sensors, they would appear as a standard if outnumbered defensive deployment. Commander Chen Mei, still operating her stealth fighter, positioned herself in the debris belt beyond Vorinth's orbit. Her mission was critical. She would serve as an advanced observer, providing real-time intelligence on Devourer fleet movements and ensuring human forces knew the exact moment to spring their trap. All units report ready, she transmitted to Rivera. I have clear view of the approach vector. Devourers should arrive within the hour. The wait was agonizing. Soldiers checked weapons they might not need to use. Engineers verified ship systems for the 100th time. Command staff reviewed tactical plans looking for flaws that might doom the operation. And on Vorinth below, millions of civilians went about their lives, most unaware of the massive fleet preparing to battle for their survival. The Devourers arrived exactly when predicted. 5,000 ships materialized from faster-than-light transit, their formations perfect and their approach calculated for maximum efficiency. They immediately began scanning the Vorinth system, identifying targets and threats. Chen Mei watched from her hiding position as the enemy fleet organized itself. They are detecting the visible defense force. No reaction to our concealed positions yet, holding formation while they analyze the tactical situation. On the Indomitable's bridge, Rivera studied the incoming data. The Devourers were doing exactly what he had predicted, taking time to assess before committing forces. They had learned from previous encounters that human tactics involved deception. Now that caution was working against them. They are advancing toward the visible defense, Chen Mei reported. Acceleration is consistent with assault profile. Still no indication they have detected the concealed fleet. The visible defense force, commanded by a grizzled Vryn admiral named Torath, prepared for contact. His ships numbered barely 300, facing an enemy more than 15 times their strength. But Torath had fought humans during the border disputes. He understood their doctrine now. All ships hold formation, Torath ordered. Make them think we are fighting the old way. When they commit fully to the attack, we become unpredictable. The Devourer fleet approached methodically, ships spreading into optimal attack positions. Their weapons began charging, preparing for the overwhelming bombardment that would crush the defenders and open Vorinth to harvesting operations. They are fully committed to frontal assault, Chen Mei reported. Fleet concentration is maximum. Recommend trap activation in 60 seconds. Rivera watched the chronometer count down. Timing was everything. Too early and the Devourers could reposition. Too late, and the visible defense would be destroyed before help arrived. He needed them at the exact moment when momentum made retreat impossible, but victory remained uncertain. 30 seconds. On Vorinth's surface, High Chancellor Vorn watched the sky from his governmental palace. The battle had not yet become visible, but sensors showed the imminent clash. Around him, his staff worked frantically to coordinate planetary defenses and evacuation of critical government functions. 15 seconds. Admiral Torath's ships opened fire, their weapons barely scratching Devourer shields, but serving their purpose of holding enemy attention. The Devourers returned fire with devastating effect. Council ships began exploding, their shields overwhelmed by concentrated bombardment. 10 seconds. Rivera's hand hovered over the activation control. Every instinct told him to act immediately to save Torath's ships. But strategy demanded patience. The trap required perfect execution. 5 seconds, more council ships died. Hundreds of crew members, beings with families and hopes and futures, vanished in explosions that lit up the void. 3 weeks after the Battle of Vorinth, Ambassador Sarah Chen stood before the Galactic Council once more. The chamber bore scars from the invasion. Several delegate stations remained empty, their occupants killed when Devourer forces had struck their homeworlds. Repairs were ongoing throughout the building, construction crews working around the clock to restore the ancient structure. But today was not about mourning losses. Today would determine the future relationship between humanity and the rest of the galaxy. High Chancellor Vorn addressed the assembly, his voice carrying the weight of recent trauma. The Council convenes to address the matter of humanity's military actions during the Devourer invasion. While their tactics proved effective, many question whether we have replaced one threat with another. Chen remained standing, her posture relaxed but alert. She had expected this. Victory did not erase fear, and the galaxy had seen firsthand what humanity was capable of when fighting for survival. Ambassador Thress of the Cortani Federation spoke first. Humanity destroyed an inhabited planet. New Terra was rendered uninhabitable for centuries. Thousands of soldiers and civilians died implementing human tactics. We must address whether such methods are acceptable even in victory. New Terra was already doomed. Chen replied calmly. The Devourers would have harvested it completely. By triggering the crustal disruption, we saved millions of lives on other worlds and crippled a significant enemy fleet. The mathematics are irrefutable. Mathematics are not morality, Thress countered. You treat lives as numbers in a calculation. Chen met her gaze directly. No, I treat lives as precious enough to fight for with every tool available. Morality is easy when you are not facing extinction. It becomes complicated when someone is actively trying to kill everyone you love. We made hard choices because the alternative was everyone dying while maintaining moral purity. A Solmari delegate rose. Yet the precedent troubles us. If humanity can justify destroying planets for strategic advantage during this crisis, what prevents similar justifications in future conflicts? How do we know human military power will not be turned against council members once the Devourer threat is resolved? The question hung in the air. Chen took a breath before answering. You do not know. You cannot know. That uncertainty will always exist when dealing with any species capable of violence, and humans are very capable of violence. The honesty of her response created ripples of unease throughout the chamber. Council diplomacy rarely acknowledged uncomfortable truths so directly. However, Chen continued, consider what humanity did during this crisis. We coordinated with Council forces, shared our tactical knowledge, and took casualties defending worlds that were not our own. We could have withdrawn to human space and left you to face the Devourers alone. We did not. We fought alongside you because we understood that galactic civilization is worth preserving. General Carthex, attending as military advisor, added his perspective. I fought alongside human forces at Vorinth. I watched their captains make decisions that no council officer would consider. Some of those decisions cost lives unnecessarily by our standards, but those same decisions saved my battle group 3 times during the engagement. Human tactical doctrine is brutal, but it is effective. The question is not effectiveness, a Yentris representative said quietly. The question is control. How does the Council ensure that humanity's military capabilities remain defensive rather than offensive? Before Chen could respond, a new voice entered the debate. Captain Marcus Rivera, who had been observing from the gallery, stepped forward. Protocol dictated he should not speak without council permission, but he spoke anyway. You cannot control us, Rivera said bluntly. You need to understand that fundamental truth. Humanity did not survive 4 million years on a death world by being controllable. We survived by being adaptable, unpredictable, and willing to do whatever survival required. Security moved to escort him out, but Vorn raised an appendage to stop them. Let him speak. I wish to hear this, Rivera continued. Every species here wants guarantees. You want contracts, treaties, oversight committees that ensure humans will never threaten you. But those guarantees are illusions. If humanity decided to become a threat, your committees would not stop us. Your fleets could not stop us. You know this now. The chamber erupted in protest, but Rivera spoke over them. But here is what you should understand. Humanity does not want conquest. We want what every species wants. Safety for our families, freedom to build our civilization, the opportunity to explore and create and exist without constant threat. The Devourers threatened that, so we fought. If you threaten that, we will fight you too. But if you leave us in peace, we will leave you in peace. Ambassador Chen stepped beside Rivera, silently supporting his breach of protocol. Captain Rivera speaks truth, though perhaps more directly than diplomacy prefers. Humanity cannot be controlled through oversight or restrictions. But we can be trusted to act in our own interests, and right now, our interests align with a stable, peaceful galactic civilization. For now, Thres interjected, but interests change. Powers rise and fall. What happens when human interests no longer align with galactic peace? Chen was quiet for a long moment before answering. Then you will have the same problem every civilization faces with powerful neighbors. You will need to ensure that peaceful cooperation remains more beneficial than conflict. You will need to build relationships strong enough that war becomes unthinkable, or you will need to become strong enough that attacking you carries unacceptable cost. She gestured around the chamber. The Devourers gave you a gift, though painful. They showed you that the galaxy is not safe, that civilizations face existential threats. Your rules for civilized warfare worked perfectly until you encountered an enemy who did not care about civilization. Humanity provided the tactical brutality needed to survive that encounter. Now you must decide how to proceed. High Chancellor Vorn spoke after a lengthy pause. Ambassador Chen, Captain Rivera, the Council appreciates your candor. However, we cannot simply ignore the precedents set during the invasion. The Council must establish guidelines for human military operations going forward. No, Chen said flatly. The single word shocked the Assembly into silence. No one refused the High Chancellor so directly. Humanity will not submit to military restrictions that leave us vulnerable. Chen continued. We will negotiate transparency protocols. We will participate in joint military exercises. We will establish communication channels for crisis situations. But we will not surrender our ability to defend ourselves to a committee that does not understand Deathworlder warfare. Then we are at an impasse, Vorn said sadly. The Council cannot accept a member species that refuses oversight. Before Chen could respond, something unexpected happened. Commander Galactic of the Vryn Empire, whose fleet humanity had destroyed during the border dispute, stood. High Chancellor, I would speak. Vorn gestured permission, curious about this development. I opposed humanity's council membership, Galactic admitted. I lost many soldiers to human tactics. I believed them too dangerous to integrate into galactic society. I was wrong. He manipulated a control displaying tactical data from the Battle of Vorinth. During the battle, a human destroyer detected my flagship taking critical damage. They had no obligation to help. In fact, helping me required diverting from their assigned mission and exposing themselves to additional fire. Yet they came. They positioned themselves between my ship and the Devourer weapons. They took damage meant for us. 3 human crew members died, saving my life and the lives of my officers. Galactic turned to face Chen directly. Humanity fights with brutal efficiency. This is true. But they also fight for more than themselves. At Vorinth, humans died defending dozens of species, many of whom had previously been their enemies. That is not the behavior of a threat. That is the behavior of an ally. Other voices began joining the discussion. A Solmari captain described how human tactics had saved his battle group. A Carthan commander spoke of human medical teams treating wounded aliens with the same priority as their own injured. Story after story emerged of humanity's actions during the crisis. Ambassador Thress, who had been humanity's harshest critic, finally spoke again. I still believe human methods are barbaric. I still fear what humanity might become, but I acknowledge that without human intervention, my homeworld would be a lifeless rock right now. Fear must be balanced with gratitude. Chen watched the debate unfold, saying nothing. This was not something diplomacy could resolve. The galaxy needed to make its own decision about humanity's place among the stars. Finally, High Chancellor Vorn called for order. The Council will vote, not on restrictions or oversight, but on a simpler question. Does humanity remain a Council member in good standing, with all rights and responsibilities that entails? The vote proceeded species by species. Some voted with enthusiasm, others with reluctance. A few abstained, unable to reconcile their fear with their gratitude. But when the count finished, the result was clear. Humanity would remain in the Council, not as a junior partner requiring supervision, but as a full member whose capabilities, however frightening, were recognized as valuable to galactic civilization.